Welcome back on the AM show. Time now for us to get into the news review. It's brought to you courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And as always, they're offering you, if you're a man, prostate screening for free. If you're a woman, fertility screening for free. You can reach them at any of their branches. Let's start from right here in Accra. They can be found at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. Then there's Kumasi Kronomabwe here, behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Energy State, Tema Community 22, Tichiman Hanswa, and the Siama and Zema. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Sweetie Abochi and our main guest for the morning, Dr. Sharif Khalid. He is Associate Professor of Accounting and Finance. He joins the conversation this morning. Well, here we are. Before we get into it, how's the doom so? Doom
I asked you
so
how close
treating
you
you
were to tears yesterday.
this close.
Because
this
yesterday I cried. Listen, I have this tiny electric fan.
What type of crying? Is it the mama or the...
I mean, I was like, I heaved a sigh of relief and then I just like shed a tear or two. Because I got home to no lights. I thought,
yeah, same here.
Please help me.
Power was out.
So this is the only thing I could find in my closet that didn't need pressing. And when the electric fan finally gave up on me, I thought, God, I can.
Is it the rechargeable? The rechargeable type.
The rechargeable.
You felt you were safe, eh?
This still seems a very middle class conversation.
Oh my goodness, Benjamin,
Right.
we need solar panels and.
Charlie, this morning has been rough for me. I mean, it's just.
Anyway, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Well, I am, but I don't want to say anything. What can I say? Right, because it's very erratic. You can't plan. Right, sometimes you have lights out. You get to the office and there's lights out. So what do? You just spend your day in a coffee shop or a restaurant where you're not really very... So I'm really wondering how businesses are going to be faring, because if all of us are trooping to the coffee shops and the restaurants, what it means is that they are running gensets.
Yeah.
And before you realize, they'll start shifting the cost of running their gensets onto consumers. And you could see petrol is also going up, diesel is going up. So it looks like from both ends of the energy divide, it's trouble.
You see, that's the trend now, eh?
Yeah.
I know people who, once the light is, people, here's the routine. Mm-hmm. The person calls home. That is for those who have people at home, or a neighbor. Is there light? No light, Charlie. They'll roam in town now.
When I'm driving home, there's a junction I get to. When I see there's lights out there, then I just make a U-turn.
I can tell from the traffic light.
Yeah.
When I get to the traffic light, or I get to a certain neighborhood, depending on, and then I know that, this one.
But you see, interestingly, I mean, it's the annoying bit in all of this is you have certain suburban areas within Accra where allegedly big men live around, and I understand Doomso is not as heavy as it should be over there. I don't know how true this is, but I think...
Oh, it is true.
It is true.
In some of these neighborhoods, it's not so...
It's not,
and you see, it's also about... And that's why sometimes I feel it's targeted.
Yeah.
Because I know people who live in certain areas that are, you would call the armpit of town. When they say somewhere is the armpit of town, they're like it's not, and they constantly get power outages. And other places that I sometimes pass through and practically never would you find the lights
because I understand
off. And I'm talking of plusher areas.
Dansuman, what do you call this? Cantonments, Laboni.
Do you know my confusion, gentlemen?
Yeah.
If, from what we are gathering are the facts, Gridco is the one turning off some installations to prevent the grid from tripping. And they don't
not always.
Unable to isolate critical areas like hospitals and military bases and the rest.
ECG
so how are they isolating the so-called big men from this power outage?
No, it's
the control room.
It's a cluster.
It's a control room, and they have all the...
They say they cannot isolate the critical installation.
But how are they able to isolate areas that they're able to turn off?
No, so here's the thing.
So technically, if you can turn off an area, you can literally
Ben Wachi of ASEP
says
when Gridco, let's say you have 200 megawatts that you must trip down because else the system will shut down nationally.
Yeah.
They will look for a catchment area which can take that load off. Yeah. So maybe it is Medina, some estate somewhere, or a whole community. Pam, you are off, and that's how they reduce it. If it is happening like this, the segregation then would not be from them.
Yeah.
Because let's say if Roman Ridge Airport, it means likely that area will go off together.
But you see, what
okay? If these are happening, it's either ECG is behind it, or maybe the transformer issues they've been talking about. So it's not all. No, it's not all of these that necessarily come from.
You see, the point is, all of
these excuses.
Well, I'm not even putting on the doorsteps of Gridco, right? ECG has a mandate to maintain transformers, to replace faulty transformers, to replace obsolete transformers. What have been happening in the last couple of years? So if we say we are not in doomsday, right, yet they are broken transformers or they are obsolete transformers, what are we in? When you say you are having energy crisis, it's not just about power distribution. It goes across the entire value chain. So if transformers are an issue, it means there's something fundamentally wrong somewhere, and someone should be answering a managerial question.
Anyway, let's get into the papers. But before we do, there's this quote from Prophet Dr. Akufo-Addo. We put it out, and he says, "We pray for you, we trust God with you, and speak positively that things will be better. And you people are there enjoying with your families. When the lights go off or go out, and we are in the heat and darkness, your generator starts automatically, and we pay for it." So that's why, sometimes when you are talking about these things, they don't have a real feel of it, because guess what? The genset will kick in and you and I will be sweating bullets.
You see, it's all about our geographical issues as well in terms of community designs and where our buildings and all of that. What I keep saying is that we've pushed majority of the population to what I term the dangerous periphery, right? And the dangerous periphery, you usually would not have policymakers, big decision makers, politicians living in these areas. Now all politicians are clustering around Labone, Chado, and all of these places. How many ordinary people, right, are within these places? You have people driving from Amasama and Kaswa, even beyond Kaswa to all of these places. And you would see, one mistake we make is that you look at the geographical layout. Kaswa and its environs are probably one of the most dense populated areas, not just in Ghana, but West Africa.
Right.
Now, if we are plunging to power crisis within these areas where we have issues of crime and all of this happening, what kind of a society are we building for ourselves?
Well, that's the situation. We have limited time. Let's quickly get into the papers.
Starting with the Ghanaian Times newspaper. The front page says, World Bank, IMF spring meetings in Washington, D.C. Ghana's economy gains momentum towards stability, according to the finance minister. VIP outlines education policy proposal to CHAS. Man, 50, impregnates 14-year-old junior high school student. Victim sacked from school. I want to start with that story because
victim sacked from school.
The victim is rather sacked from the school. This is the Ghanaian Times newspaper, and the story is on page 3. It says a 14-year-old junior high school student, name withheld, who was defiled and impregnated by a mason, only known as Kobi, believed to be in his 50s, has been dismissed from the school. The authorities of South Lane Lakeview School at Kaswa Hideout in the Ghana South municipality of the Greater Accra region sacked the victim against policy guidelines of the Ghana Education Service. The student, who was initially denied registration for the upcoming Basic Education Certificate exam, was said to have been finally registered only after persuasion from a friend to the grandmother of the child. So the GES, with support from UNICEF and other partners, have since 2018 been implementing a re-entry policy for pregnant girls. It is within this policy context that a back-to-school campaign was launched in 2021. This is disturbing, that the victim of an abuse should be sacked from school.
That's quite interesting. It just tells us
I don't know whether the right word has been used or whether the person is being, you see, sometimes they would let the person, to protect and let the person go through psychological, whatever. I don't know what is happening. But if sacked is
our educational system should have this support system. So why do you have to go and sit at home to do that? Right. But then again, I'm probably behind this. I haven't checked what the code is. It's been a while. But what I'm expecting is that what kind of a support system do we have?
Wow. I need to chip this in.
Okay.
A letter addressed to the 14-year-old girl signed by the headmaster of the school, Mr. Shadrach Bokete, indicated that the school was focused on providing a conducive environment for studying. Therefore, permitting a pregnant student to continue her studies in the same classroom as other pupils would hamper teaching and learning. Quote, as an educational institution, we are committed to providing an environment that fosters academic growth and personal development for our students. However, your current situation requires us to take this action. There you have it.
Well, I think GES ought to give a response to this so we can have clarity. But again, as I said, it's at the end of life if someone really it's pregnant in school. We're not saying it's the best, but if it does happen, what support system does our educational setup have? And this brings me to a very important point, which is so dear to my heart, I keep hammering. Look, we have some students that have learning disabilities like dyslexia, among others. And we have teachers pulling them to the front of the classroom being hooted at because they are not really doing well, when we ought to be creating support systems, right, to actually even give them extra time, extra tuition and support. But our educational system appears rather it's built to destroy. So you can imagine the number of students with learning disabilities that have not been diagnosed that we treat this way compared to a situation like this. So I think that yes, GES ought to speak to this. And also some of the unions as well ought to be speaking to this, because I really find it difficult. Is it a case of suspending her or maybe truncating her education such that when she put to birth and she's probably strong enough to return to the classroom, she comes back to continue her education? But being pregnant at 14 should not end someone's educational...
I just have to add this very briefly. We have it completely wrong when it comes to rape and dealing with it in this country, because someone gets raped, for example, sexually assaulted, and most of them would not even go to the hospital. You know why? Because now to get those forms and get the medical test run, you go to certain places, what ordinarily should be free, and now you're expected to pay and all of that for the swabs and everything. And some people can't get it, so they can't get evidence early enough. I mean, the whole system is chaotic. It's problematic.
Now, the former PPA boss has been granted 4 million Ghana cedi bail. 3 in court for allegedly robbing victim of phone. I'm just doing the headlines, and then if you want to react to any of the stories quickly, we'll get into it before we move on to other papers. EC clears 6 to contest a Ejisu by-election by April 30. Ghana's economy gains momentum towards stability, according to Finance Minister. That's an interesting one. We saw our very own. Work begins at Amensie West Road project. Minister hands over 70 units at J.A. Kufo Housing Estate to GIS. Doc, any of these stories you want to react to before we move on to other papers? Dr.
Well, maybe I would get into page 13 of the Daily Graphic, because it's tied to the first story you spoke about, the PPA boss.
Right.
Ajanim Boateng,
right.
J. So, former Chief Executive Officer of the Public Procurement Authority, Ajanim Boateng J, has pleaded not guilty to the fresh criminal charges filed against him by the Office of the Special Prosecutor. The charges, which were filed at the Criminal Division of the High Court in Accra last Wednesday, are 8 counts of using public office for profit and indirectly influencing procurement processes to obtain an unfair advantage in the award of procurement contracts. I mean, we know the story. I've forgotten the name of the entity, but he, together with some relative, and creating this entity that was getting contracts. And, you know, he was put into the role, placed there because he was, you know, seemed to be one of the big brains, not just in Ghana when it comes to public procurement and everything in between. I'm not accusing him of anything, but we know the tale of the tape. His accounts, bank accounts before taking office and after taking office, and the millions that were found, and the investigations and everything, and why this shadow company was getting so many contracts. The facts accompanying the charges are that by a letter signed by his secretary, President Akufo-Addo referred allegations of corruption against Ajay to the OSP. The referral was on the back of and based on an audiovisual documentary titled Contracts for Sale. That is when this came up. And until now, it is what it is.
Well, but I mean, interesting.
You know, the fight against corruption has really done well. You know that there's such a forceful, rigorous, vigorous, boisterous, buoyant fight against corruption.
Has it been? Well, the point is, I mean, let's compare these.
Talk of irony and sarcasm.
I know. Like, let's talk of the comparison to these cases, right? It looks like probably he's not in the good books of the Flagstaff House or possibly the...
No, this is not even now.
No,
it has to do with earlier.
I'm even comparing the case to Cecilia Dapa's case, how it's been handled, right? And they are like diametrically opposed.
The one whose integrity was seen to be...
Yeah, to be. And you saw how the president fought tooth and nail to protect her, and she's still being protected. And for me, again, all of what this has done is it has desecrated an independent created office such as the Office of the Special Prosecutor and demystified it, right, and taking off the strong powers it ought to have had. When I saw the Special Prosecutor in mere tears before national TV on the Dapa case, was quite worrying, because in other jurisdictions, when you have special prosecutors, what it means is that you have extra powers to do what you have to do. And when they stand before podiums, right, they drop indictments.
Whether the ombudsman or special prosecutor,
they drop
whatever
indictments.
name you want to give it.
Yes.
And this is the second time this has happened.
They drop indictments. And we have hours before us in near tears, helpless.
And this is the second time Martin Amidu got to this point and left.
Yeah. So Martin Amidu has been vindicated in all of this. Right. I mean, and we all know also Kisi Ejabin, very astute lawyer. So we all have big expectations. But has the presidency been supportive of his office? That's an interesting one. We tend to see green, powerful letters fly in the play all over the place, other than the right to be done. So, and sometimes embarrassing, like when you travel abroad and they mention some of these cases. Oh, are you from the country where the minister put millions under her bed? And how do you defend?
Oh boy.
Yeah, you hear all of these.
The minister did.
Millions of dollars under her bed, and you hear all of these issues.
It's totally unheard of, right?
Right. More so when we are under an IMF program, where going after similar amounts or close to that, when you could see all of these things.
But do you see how quickly they serve justice to this man who crashed the train?
Yeah, I raised it on one of your sisters. On City that I did, because I was like, why the rush, like it didn't add up. It's bad. And it goes to feed into the conspiracy theory that maybe this was planned, whatsoever. So you're really wondering, but I asked myself, was the vehicle even insured? Is the train insured? So are the repairs going to be done via insurance? We don't know all of these questions,
You're even asking yourself whether we have to bring some Poles from Poland to come in. Oh yeah, it's a valid question.
No, it is.
In Ghana, it's a valid question.
And another fundamental question I ask myself is the regulatory authority.
No, I'm only saying
the regulatory
that we have to look into it, because for all you know,
authority, Railway Development Authority. I'm wondering, what expertise they have in this regard, what statement they've issued to assure the public, because you realize that most of us are stuck to our vehicular traffic issues, and even trying to convince people to get on trains, safety issues are a concern. So if you're having a test run and this has just happened, it deters people from,
test run and pony, and you get me there.
Test running,
and if the pace of the train is anything to go by.
And you ask your question, communication and surveillance, what happens in this regard? So what it simply tells us is that our rail system really needs to be looked at.
Let's get into some other stories very quickly.
Do that.
So North records high free SHS enrollment. Education Minister says so. The way we are so enamored with, the numbers are shooting up. We are, I'll not use that word. Let me keep my thoughts to myself. CITA gives government May 31 to implement NLC awards. And then financing electricity, water extension, consumers can claim a refund. That's according to the PURC. So let me do this one, then I'll just touch and go on those stories and we can call it a wrap. Utility consumers in the country who are able to finance the development or extension of service to their properties are now entitled to a refund of their investment. For instance, property owners who buy a pole or more to extend electricity to their facilities can claim a refund for the expenses. This followed the introduction of a new regulatory requirement by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission called the Capital Contribution Guidelines, or the CCG, document. Now, the document, which is to operationalize the legislative instrument 1816, otherwise known as Electricity Supply and Distribution, that is Technical and Operational Rules 2005, was designed to offer customers a refund of up to 60% of their contribution in the form of cash or materials towards extension of service. But is that what we've seen? So if this is going to happen now, well, we thank God for that. And Dr. Ishmael Aka, Executive Secretary of the PURC, pictured there. Doc Twaso. Then let me go to page 13, and then I'll cap it off. Page 13, the story there. The College of Education Teachers Association of Ghana has expressed its frustration over the government's non-compliance with the National Labour Commission's compulsory arbitration awards to members of the association, and has issued a 1-month ultimatum to for its implementation. It warned that if the outstanding awards were not fully implemented by May 31, 2024, CAG members would take matters into their own hands. And one Mr. Obinghima said that, and he is president of CAG, said CAG embarked on an indefinite strike in August 2023, which was later called off due to the intervention of the NLC. However, the employer's failure to comply with the awards has led to a deepening of the crisis, and so they want what they feel they deserve. And the final bit, well, I've mentioned it. North records high free SHS enrollments. Maybe I should just give some. The 5 regions of the North have embraced the free senior high school program than anywhere else in the country, the Minister of Education, Dr. Yawase Edichum, has said. For instance, he said, out of every 100 students who qualified for SHS in the northern region, 95 of them enrolled in the schools, adding that the figure was one of the highest in the world.
But I don't get...
But why are you guys not clapping?
No, but I
one of the
get
highest
this,
in the world.
I don't get this one you
Come on, let's clap. Let's clap for the,
Benjamin.
I'll indulge you. Let's clap.
Let's do it for the... They are making great strides.
I'll not join in this deception. No, but the point is, look, can we start having decoupling this?
Hey!
Right? When you say higher rates of enrollment in free SHS, is a higher rate of enrollment in secondary education or free SHS? I don't get it.
It's free SHS.
No, everything must be, everything at that level must be tied to, it's a program. Yes, it is.
No, come on. Can we be,
please, let's give some life to the program, Let's accept where credit is due.
Benjamin is saying the policy
right. We're not saying it's a bad policy, right? It's about the quality of it.
It's like when you have a good cause, right?
Yes.
And then you are over. It's like, we know that, I have wronged Sweetie, and everyone is saying, Sweetie, you are in the right. And then Sweetie just goes on and she wants to punch me, and then everyone is like,
you know what I'm expecting from the minister? How long have we had free SHS running? For over 5 years, right? 5 years into a program. It's enough to have a review or an assessment, an impact. We should be having that report rather than telling us that you've had the enrollment that's the largest in the world. Right? Back in the day, if you went up north, education was a big of a struggle because there were fewer schools, right? So more schools have been put in the last couple of years, right? So whatever you expect is that you would have more enrollment in secondary education, right? Or at that level, or in high school education. So is it a case of high school education or enrollment of free SHS? That's the fundamental question we should ask. In any case, in the last 5 years, what has been the improvement in the literacy and numeracy skills, right? We've been talking about PISA rankings and all of that. How are we getting closer to all of these issues? This should be the fundamental debate around free SHS, not just enrollment. And they should learn to decouple between, enrolling in high school education or whether it is actually for free SHS. What assessment has been done to say, okay, well, it's because it's free education or because it's free SHS, that's why we're having this enrollment. And if you have a minister who is like the highest policy-making persona in this regard, start to speak this way, then you would appreciate what information is going to be cascaded down the educational value chain and how we're all going to feed into it. Then at the end of the day, you'd realize that. You see, Benjamin, when we talk about all of these issues of, I was just having this a few friends of mine from Holy Child and Wesley Girls, the so-called grade A schools.
Yeah.
And one of them said a very fundamental statement. She was like, look, after having seen free SHS and some of the happenings in the schools that they found pride in, she's never thought for once that she would never sit somewhere and say, or she'll ever sit somewhere and say, I'll never allow my daughter to go to Holy Child. But now she's beginning to think so. Or I'll never allow my daughter to go to Wesley Girls because she's beginning to think so. It's not what it used to be, because they've gone to see what the quality is in terms of, students' support systems that have been left and the kind of burden free SHS has put on these first-class institutions. So I think that this is where the stakeholder debate should be happening. It's been long overdue. Can we have an engagement? Can we have an impact assessment? Publish that data. Let's engage with that and distill it. That's where we can begin to talk about impacts and enrollment of free SHS.
I was just reading the fact because I wanted to be sure that I saw it. The fact check we did a fact check on free SHS. And it turns out they are bloating the numbers even. It's not...
You're talking of the...
I didn't even think about it from this
the
perspective.
performance tracker, right?
I just wanted to get the...
But we exposed
right.
that. We exposed that.
So,
okay.
instead of they're saying that, quote, today some 5.7 million children who are our own children, brothers and sisters, have benefited from the program. But the difference in the numbers has raised suspicion regarding the actual number of beneficiaries under the free SHS program. And some 503,000 difference. So they're bloating the figure by 503,000.
But sweetie, my point also here is this.
And you say that's the highest in the world, and so we should clap.
The highest in the world, by which comparison? My minister shouldn't be speaking this way. What is he comparing it to? And you look at these things. It'll be interesting to know where Edichum's kids are, whether they are within free SHS system or within...
you don't even have to think
about it. But
I mean, you can't even speculate.
Yeah, so again, the question I ask is, you even look at internationally, how we fit into the international educational system. Right, even now, these days, again, I stand corrected. I understand that the West African examination, not WAEC, I think WASI, they write different kinds of exams because, like, I think some countries, I don't know if it's Nigeria or other countries would have questions or standards different to what we will be having. So I don't know where this segregation is coming from. Again, this is something we have to look at. And those of us within the international educational setup, you would see it's hardly would you have people from a free SHS system qualifying to get into international educational system for undergraduate degrees, because most of them are looking at GCSEs, IB, which is International Baccalaureate, and GCSEs, which we had before. We sold it to the rich. And now to have access to it, you pay an arm and a leg for it. So now you ask yourself, well, how many of us have our wards within the free SHS system, right? Bar those in supposed A-class list schools like Presec, maybe Opoku-Ware and the likes of that. You have other people just putting their kids in the likes GIS, Lincoln, and I'm not saying if you can afford it, why not? But again, you'd realize that there's something fundamental happening. We're talking about free SHS, Doomso, and all of this. There were times in this country when you say when the roads are bad, you buy a 4WD. When the lights are bad, you get a genset. Right? When the tap is not running, you get a polytank. We've reached a stage now where none of these mean anything to us.
Well, we do have to go. We have to go now. I think how things are going, it's got to comical levels.
Yes,
and you must either find humor in there, or you will crash. You will burn out. I have an interesting comment coming through. There are so many of them, but I want to address this person. We're so hypocritical in this country. Yeah. One Nana Prempe comes through, and some people are addressing him and dealing with him, but I just want to say, we are part of the problem. Yeah. Nana Prempe says he's asking whether I am political or a journalist because I always have issues against government. Nana Prempe, should I have issues against the opposition? Is the opposition in power? Think about it. Yeah. I'm actually fighting for you. No. And if you don't realize that, then I don't know what thinking cap you're wearing, Nana Prempe. And it's not to insult you, but yesteryear, when the other administration was in power, and I was giving them a proper haircut, Sakura, did you think I was being political then? Think about it. Just reflect on it. Give it a good thought. Those are my final words. You have people like this who would come through from time to time when an NDC man is here or woman is here, and you give them a hard time. Oh, this person is from that side. When an NPP person, or we are discussing issues of government, oh, this person is from the other side. Without thinking, sitting down to think that it is in their interest that we speak. So when you have a population like this...
That's the polarity of society.
Actually, the politicians are not the worst problems. Yes. People who think like this are the worst problems.
Yeah, but Benjamin, that's what I'm saying. That's the polarity of society, and your job, you should develop a thick skin for this because...
Oh, I mean, these things...
Yeah, but your food for thought is... I hope he's got the listening ears. That's if the person... It's not a studio account. So we don't even know whether it's a he or a she because you have all of these things happening in the social media space.
Anyway, we're grateful for your time this morning. And I wish you light today. I pray for light for you as well today.
Yeah.
And for myself, because...
That's what we should start wishing each other.
That's a big prayer.
You know someone said something. I think I took a
wish me
screenshot.
My goodness.
A friend of mine who has had to relocate to the UK. Let me just see whether I can find the image. But he suggests that when you get to the point where you begin praying for things as basic as light, like you're praying when you're leaving work that, oh, I hope there is light at home, then, he says, when you see people thanking God for having electricity for the night, you understand why in Africa we worry God by praying for things that are not problems.
No,
things that we should use our heads and solve.
At the weekend, I went
praying
to
to God about
family. And when my cousin was not home, I asked why. He said, well, there's doom, so he's a lawyer. He's working from home for a client, and the lights went out, so he had to look for somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
He has to drive 2 hours plus to go to a friend's house to sit there and get the work done. This is where we are, but we're still living in denial.
I wish you light. We have to go.
At least let's get the basic minimum rights for everyone. If we get the basic minimum, then we can start to talk about our luxuries.
Sweetie Abochi, thank you. Dr. Sharif Khalid, Associate Professor, actually, of Accounting and Finance. Thank you for joining the conversation. Right before we go, this segment is always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. As always, they are offering you prostate screening for free if you're a man, fertility screening for free if you're a woman. Reach out to them at any of their branches here in Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Kronoma here behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and the Siaman Zima. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Sports is up next. Do stay.